Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ernst Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. Week 10 in the AP Top 25 poll is here, and this is the last week that the AP poll is going to be the biggest poll that people pay attention to because the college football playoff rankings will be out on Tuesday night. It's crazy that we're already approaching November. Halloween's right around the corner. I hope everybody does have a happy Halloween. But the college football season is flying by. We only have a few weeks of the regular season left, so we got to take advantage of college football while we have it, the precious few weeks that are left. But I'm going to break down this week's AP Top 25 poll for the last time that it's going to matter before the college football playoff rankings come out and see what I think about the rankings. Now, there's been massive debate about Georgia being the number one team because Ohio State has the best resume and Michigan has been the most dominant team in college football based on the scores that they put up against every team that they've played. Whereas Georgia's been somewhere in the middle. They've played a couple of quote-unquote tough opponents, but they haven't really played a great team yet, and they haven't been dominant against anybody except Kentucky. And a lot of people believe that when the college football playoff rankings come out, Georgia will not be number one, but they're still number one in the AP poll after they beat the Florida Gators. They have Missouri up next. That's going to be a tough game at home, but Georgia's going to be the number one team in the AP Top 25 poll until they lose. But we'll have to see what the college football playoff rankings put the Georgia Bulldogs, and there's a great chance that they are not the number one team. Michigan's a number two. They had a bye last week, and like I've well documented, they've been dominant against every team that they've played. They've got Purdue up next. There's a shot Michigan's the number one team in the college football playoff rankings. Definitely cannot wait for those rankings to come out, but the AP voters have been consistent with leaving Michigan right behind the Georgia Bulldogs until Georgia loses. So the Wolverines will stay at number two in the AP poll. Ohio State's at number three, and like I said, they have a good resume. Maybe they'll be the number one team in the college football playoff rankings, but for now, they're number three in the AP poll. They won at Wisconsin, which is always a tough place to play, and they've got Rutgers on the road up next, which Rutgers is an improved team, but you still feel like Ohio State should be able to beat them as long as they play well. But we'll see, like I said, with the college football playoff rankings, but Ohio State will be number three in the AP poll until Georgia or Michigan loses. Florida State's number four. They won at Wake Forest very comfortably last week. They've got Pitt on the road up next, which you never want to play around with Pittsburgh. They're always tough on the road. But the top four in the AP Top 25 poll has been the same for the last few weeks. But we'll have to see if the CFP rankings are different. Washington is at number five, and they've had a couple of close calls the last couple of weeks. After the win over Oregon, they barely beat Arizona State because of the fact that their offense couldn't get anything going. And now they barely beat Stanford on the road because their defense couldn't stop the opponent. So that's very interesting. We'll have to see if Washington can play better on the road at USC up next. Washington definitely has to play their best on both sides of the ball if they want to beat the Trojans, and if they do, they'll stay in the top five. Oregon's at number six. They won at Utah last week. By far the most impressive win that any team had in college football last week because Utah has not lost a home game with fans in 4 years, and I even picked the Utah Utes to win, but Oregon is a more talented team than the Utes. Utah did not have Cam Rising, and it showed on the football field in this game because Oregon shut down the Utes offense, and Utah's defense and that home crowd at Rice Eccles was not enough to stop the Oregon Ducks. The Ducks do move up from number 8 to number 6, and even though they have that loss to Washington, if they can keep winning and win out, they can still make the college football playoff. They've got Cal up next. You would think Oregon can handle business in that game. Texas is number 7. They beat BYU at home last week, and they've got Kansas State up on the docket next week. The Longhorns have surpassed Oklahoma in the rankings again because the Sooners dropped the game, and Texas still in the hunt for the college football playoff if they can win out. And like with all these other teams, it will be interesting to see where the Longhorns are in the CFP rankings in 2 days. Alabama's the number 8. They had a bye last week. They've got LSU at home up next. That's probably the toughest game Alabama has left on their schedule. Doesn't mean they can't slip up at Kentucky and at Auburn. But if Alabama can beat LSU, they will jump a spot or two more than likely in the AP poll, especially if a team like Washington slips up against USC next week. Alabama still hanging around, not out of the CFB hunt. It's going to be interesting to see if the Crimson Tide can keep on winning and move up in the rankings. Penn State is at number 9, and they had a scare against Indiana last week. The Hoosiers were tied with Penn State with 3 minutes to go in the game, but they fell apart late. Penn State got the win. It wasn't too impressive, but they stay in the top 10 for now, and they'll more likely be in the top 10 in the CFP rankings as well. Oklahoma had a bad loss last week to the Kansas Jayhawks on the road. That really hurts their college football playoff chances. Is Kansas a bad team? No, they're a really solid team, but still, you can't lose that game if you want to be a college football playoff team. If Oklahoma wins out, they can still get there, but that loss definitely hurts Oklahoma's chances. It's going to make it a lot harder, especially with Oklahoma State on the road up next, a team that's been playing better as well lately. The Sooners look like they were better on defense, but they just could not stop the Jayhawks, and they fall down to number 10 because of it. Ole Miss is at number 11. They beat Vanderbilt handily last week. They've got Texas A&M at home up next. That's not an easy game. The Rebels quietly at number 11 with only one loss to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Could Ole Miss sneak their way into the college football playoff if they can win out? Very possible that they could, but Ole Miss has some tough games left. But Lane Kiffin's team playing solid this season. Notre Dame as at number 12 and LSU's at number 13. Both are two-loss teams that probably have no shot to make the college football playoff because they have two losses. Maybe if LSU can win out and be dominant and getting wins over Alabama and Georgia, they can make it interesting, but they're probably eliminated as well. But Notre Dame beat Pitt easily. LSU had a bye, and both teams have tough road days. Notre Dame has Clemson on the road. Clemson's not as good as they used to be. They're 4-4 this season, which is something I never thought I would see with a Dabo Swinney-led team, the way that they've played the last few years. But Dabo Swinney has a lot of stuff to fix, but they're still a tough out at home. And LSU playing out of Alabama, it's going to be really tough. But both LSU and Notre Dame, the best two-loss teams in college football. Missouri's at number 14, and after their big win over South Carolina, they had a bye last week. They've got Georgia on the road. We're going to find out how good Missouri is this season. If they can go out there and hang tough against Georgia and quite possibly get the upset, that would be huge. And it would propel Missouri into the top 10 and give them a shot at the college football playoff. But we'll have to see what the Tigers are capable of next week. But still, Eli Drinkwitz has done a great job to save his job, and the Tigers deserve to be in the top 15 for now, but got a tough test next week against Georgia. Louisville's at number 15, and last week they beat the Duke Blue Devils by blanking Riley Leonard's squad. Riley Leonard did not look 100%, but that's not to take anything away from Louisville. They look like a team that could make the ACC title game with the way that they're playing. They got Virginia Tech, though, up next. Virginia Tech is 3-1 in the ACC, so it's very well possible that this game will determine who the other team is besides Florida State that is in the ACC title game. Louisville cannot slip up against the improved Hokies, but the Cardinals are playing really well this season and belong in the top 15 because Oregon State lost. They fell 5 spots after losing at Arizona. I backed the Beavers. I picked them to beat Arizona, and they let me down. Granted, Arizona's playing really good football. Noah Fafita has become the new Khalil Tate at Arizona, Mr. October. It's been really fun to watch how improved that team is this season, and the fact that Jed Fish has been able to lead a program that a couple years ago had a hard time winning a game, and their fans were really loud last night on Pac-12 After Dark, and Oregon State just fell short on the road. The Beavers are a really good team. Very proud of what Jonathan Smith has done out there in Corvallis, but still, with the Pac-12 being demolished after the season and Oregon State trying to make a case to make the Big 12, the Beavers really need to look good, and that was a tough loss on the road. Air Force is at number 17. They won at Colorado State last week, and they've got Army up next. The Falcons are making a great case to be the Group of 5 representative in a New Year's Six bowl game in the Cotton Bowl. Air Force is 8-0. They've been playing great football, and outside of a couple of tough games that they've had where they've won most of the games they've been dominant in, and Air Force has been by far the best of the Armed Forces schools this season. Utah's at number 18. They lost to Oregon at home. They've got Arizona State up next in a get-right game. They cannot lose that game if Utah still wants to have a shot to be able to get a New Year's Six bowl game. The Utes are a good team, but without Cam Rising this season, it's definitely limited their offense, and they just can't hang with the best offensive teams in the Pac-12, especially when that team is Oregon, who has a good defense as well. Tennessee's at number 19. They won at Kentucky last week. That was a really good win on the road. Kentucky is a tough place to play, and Tennessee was able to get it done and stay in the top 25 because they probably would have fell out if they lost. They got UConn up next. That's an easy win for the Volunteers, which should be anyway. Tennessee not getting the media attention that they got last year when they were in the college football playoff conversation, even though they fell out toward the end of the season. But Tennessee still playing quietly solid football, and definitely the Volunteers are better than they used to be a few seasons ago. UCLA's at number 20. Last week they beat Colorado. They got Arizona on the road up next, and that is where teams are going to die right now. Arizona's playing great football. UCLA is going to have to play better than Oregon State if they want to get a win at the Wildcats. But if UCLA hangs tough and get that big road win, they'll stay in the top 25. But if they lose, they might be at number 25, or they possibly could fall out of the AP top 25 poll. Tulane's at number 21. They won at Rice in a close one last week. Rice has been playing better football with JT Daniels this season, and Michael Pratt and the Green Wave were able to get the win. They're still trying to be in the hunt like Air Force for the Cotton Bowl slot this year in a New Year's Six bowl game. If Tulane can win out and Air Force slips up, I think the Green Wave still have a shot. But even if they don't get the Cotton Bowl slot, Tulane's still having a good year. Kansas is a number 22. They're back in the AP Top 25 poll. What a job Lance Leipold has done with the Jayhawks. I thought they had a shot to beat Oklahoma with Jalen Daniels, but I didn't know they were going to beat Oklahoma with Jason Bean. Jason Bean's a good quarterback, one of the best backup quarterbacks in college football, and he was able to beat Texas 2 years ago. But this one over Oklahoma has cemented Kansas as an improved team that's here to stay. They look really solid. That isn't to say they could slip up next week at Iowa State, though, and fall right back out of the top 25 with the way Iowa State's playing. The Big 12 is really tough to figure out, but that was a huge win for the Jayhawks over Oklahoma and definitely shows how far Kansas has come from where they were a few years ago. James Madison's at number 23. They're 8-0, and like Tulane and Air Force, have been one of the best Group of 5 teams in college football this season in their first year in the FBS. It's so unfortunate they can't make a bowl game. Wish the NCAA would change that rule. But James Madison, it was a close win over Old Dominion, but a win is a win. They have at Georgia State on the road up next. Georgia State, another tough team, so would not be surprised if James Madison lost that game, thought of the AP Top 25. But still, the Dukes are having a great season, and they should make a bowl game if the NCAA had different rules. USC's at number 24. They're 7-2, but they were this close to not being in the AP Top 25 poll this week. They beat California by 1, only because California went for 2 and did not get it. So if Cal had to kick the extra point and gone to overtime, who would have known what would have happened in this game? Arizona almost beat USC in overtime a few weeks ago, but Arizona fell short. USC's defense is one of the worst in college football, and the fact that they have talent on that side of the ball, it shows you that Alex Grinch is not getting it done with the Trojans. Lincoln Riley's going to have to make a change if he wants USC to be a title contender in the future, but it's very unfortunate for Caleb Williams that he is doing everything he possibly can to get wins for this team. He's playing great football, putting up Heisman caliber stats still this season, but USC's defense is not doing him any favors, and that's why they've dropped a couple games this year, and they're struggling to beat teams like California and Arizona. And then at number 25, you got Kansas State back in the poll after they destroyed Houston 41-0. Houston's been playing a little bit better last couple weeks, but you wouldn't have been able to tell in this game because Kansas State probably played their most complete game of the entire season, but they've got Texas up next on the road. If Kansas State loses at Texas, they'll fall right out of the poll, but the Wildcats are still having a pretty solid season, and with the win over Houston, barely cracked the AP Top 25 poll. It will be interesting to see if they are in the college football playoff rankings. And in the other team votes, you got Oklahoma State, who's been playing better football and can get right back in the AP Top 25 with the win in the Bedlam game versus Oklahoma. North Carolina's up next, losing to Georgia Tech after losing to Virginia. North Carolina's just blown their chances at the playoff, blown their chances at an ACC title. It's very unfortunate when you have a quarterback like Drake May, but your defense is so poor, just like USC. I'm convinced UNC and USC are the same team, but North Carolina has fallen out of the poll after that loss. Liberty, Fresno State, Miami, Arizona, who's been playing better, Toledo, and Rutgers round out the other receiving votes. Not that many teams that the AP voters feel are in consideration for the poll, but it's going to be really interesting to see what happens down the stretch of the season in college football. There's been a lot of upsets this season, a lot of parity, still about 8 to 9 teams that have a really good shot to make the college football playoff that I could believe can make the college football playoff. I'm looking forward to the CFP rankings that are going to come out on Tuesday night, which those rankings are going to be what people are going to be basing off of, so the AP poll isn't going to really matter anymore. But let me know what you guys think down below about the Week 10 AP Top 25 poll and whether you feel that the AP voters got it right on the rankings or whether you feel some teams should have been rated higher or lower. And let me know what you guys think about the upcoming CFP rankings and where you would like to see the committee rank all of these teams. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.